Even if you're not watching this on October 31st, just pretend it's Halloween. So, we're gonna go back to the late 1990s when I was a little Falcon having a camp out with my friend V. And by camp out, I mean we were like 6 setting up a dome tent in my parents' yard. Out comes my dad, who sat in the tent with us to tell us some spooky stories he picked up from his time in the Air Force as a security policeman. Yeah, security forces were called security police back in 19... Yeah, security forces were called security police back in the 1980s, whatever. At Whiteman Air Force Base in the 1960s, silos for Minuteman ballistic missiles were being built. This involved an 80-foot some-odd shaft being dug into the ground, which was then lined with concrete. Now, apparently, one of the contractors who was put on this job went missing, and he was never found. There was no reason for him to actually, go anywhere. I mean, this is Missouri. These are flat hills and, just open farmland. So everybody was kind of like, what? Now, about 20 years later, missile technicians would have to go into the silos for routine checks to make sure the missiles were functional and whatnot. And in one silo, the techs would routinely hear the clacking sound of a hammer against concrete. It didn't take long for the guys to put 2 and 2 together. The contractor who disappeared fell into the cement and drowned, and his spirit was struggling to break free by hammering at the concrete. I wrote a creepypasta on this one like 10 years ago, don't read it. Another mysterious denizen was allegedly some kind of Sasquatch or werewolf that hopped atop one of the guard towers at RAF Lakenheath and began slashing at the roof with its claws. And it was only stopped when the poor bastard inside unloaded a full auto burst from his M16 into the ceiling, prompting the apparition to buzz off into the distance. Honestly, I would have done the same. And the third story was set at Anderson Air Force Base in Guam. During World War II, an Army Air Force chaplain was killed by a Japanese holdout sniper as he stood on the flight line watching B-29 bombers take off on combat missions. Years later, when the base was home to B-52s, security police guys would see an officer wearing an old, out-of-regulation uniform pacing on the flight line watching the bombers do their thing. And as the guys would get close to him, he would disappear as though he was never there. Is there any actual credence to these stories? None that I found on the internet. Honestly, these stories are probably fabricated by bored guys out in the missile fields in between radio checks, but I like to think that every story, especially the spooky ones, have a kernel of truth in them. If you're someone who's heard any of these stories before, I implore you to post in the comments, and if you have a story of your own, let us know. It's Halloween after all, and the time is right for cracking a brew and having a good tale. Have a happy Halloween, guys, and make sure you check your children's candy, because you might find something awesome in it if my social media is to be believed. Have a good one.